My name is Lillie Coney. I'm going to talk briefly, do an overview of the very short paper that's at the back of the room regarding auditing. I work at the Electronic Privacy Information Center, and one of the things that EPIC does in its work to ensure privacy on a number of fronts, but specifically with government agencies, is pursuing open records requests or freedom of information requests against a federal government agency. These attempts to get at information that will be of benefit or interest to the public, one of the means to assure that things are functioning as intended. We make that information available online through our website at epic.org. Agencies react differently to the idea of an entity saying, based on the statute, local, state, or federal, we're requesting access to these documents, and then going through the process of actually having to spend resources to collect the documents and send the documents on. And then, of course, we look through those documents and make available online if the information may be of interest to the public. EPIC has a voting project called the National Committee for Voting Integrity. The project brings together experts on voting issues from across the country to promote a constructive dialogue among computer scientists, and as a means to bridge the communication gap between administration, technologists, election advocates, and those of us who have particular interest regarding how the ballot is exercised in the United States. Why audit? Lessons learned from the financial services industry, which you've heard a great deal about on the panel. I won't go into all of them, but the transparency components are very important because it shows the health of an entity, oversight of complicated processes. It's kind of boiled down into an accessible format, and accounting of resources facilitate transparency and openness and increase trust, which I think is very important in an election environment. What is transparency? Its open records laws are tools for the public to better understand how resources of an organization have been used. It is a key component of a functioning, healthy democracy. Transparency in elections. We've seen good government efforts in the past that push for innovation and change in the administration of elections, starting from the mid-1800s and running through the mid-1900s. We've seen another resurgence of the interest of citizens to get engaged in the political process from the perspective of the elections administration. Transparency is a part of the elections process already. When you publish the times, locations where voters can cast ballots, sending out sample ballots, reporting on the results of the elections, statistics on registration, absentee ballots submitted and votes cast. It's all those are each components of the election transparency process. What transparency isn't, and you've heard this from other panelists, finding agreement, seeking approval, getting consensus, and admission of guilt. Those are not objectives of audit. It's very important to note that in financial services community, the last thing depositors of a bank have to do is see their bank fail an audit. No one wants to see an institution fail, and what is important is that they learn from the things that didn't go well in the auditing process. It's an opportunity to constantly improve the services that are being rendered. What are the challenges of transparency in elections? Turning election administration into uniform data points. How do we create the data that will be the foundation of an auditing process? Determining how much information is enough. How will information be captured in a uniform and reliable manner? Using the data collected in a meaningful and a productive way that will better inform election administrators, the public, media, and decision makers. Transparency in public elections requires the cooperation of public elections professionals, researchers, academics, election reformers, and voting rights advocacy groups. It requires research to support the approaches adopted. It requires adequate resources to support the auditing process itself. It requires a constant eye toward improvement. What are the challenges to election audits? We need a common language for election audits. Technologists can talk to technologists, elections officials can talk to elections officials, voting rights advocates can speak to other voting rights advocates, but how do we speak to each other? And does auditing provide an effective bridge to help us communicate more effectively with each other? Audits and public perceptions. People respond to the audit environment based on expectations. What can they reliably expect from an election audit process? Reliable and predictable communication from financial service providers are a means to create the expectations of what financial audits are all about. What is the payoff for audits? Elections are highly emotional, contested events. You have the winners and you have the losers, and that will always be the case. Can you reduce the high cost of litigation? Can you increase the robustness of processes and institutions that administer elections? We can increase the learning curve on election administration and retention of institutional memory that is more resilient with a uniform method of conducting election audits. Why audit elections? Conclusion are democracies rely on self-governance. Self-governance rely on access to information. Finding the right mix of resources to better address and understanding the process and qualifying that knowledge, quantifying that knowledge in a way that will best benefit the elections administration goals that we're trying to achieve. It's interesting to note that the first open records law on the books were passed by the Swiss in 1776. The United States instituted its own Freedom of Information Act in 1966 and has amended it just by each decade since that law was placed on books. Open records laws and rules are a good means to create a balanced approach to understanding what is required by a process or a system and learning as we go along. You're not going to create an auditing process and not have to revisit that constantly to improve that process. Thank you.